Okay. Today we're going to start the new chapter, Hazarek, on page 77a. It's the middle of the page. Okay, we thank Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day. It's chus of a learning. We should have the base of English. What's going on? What are you surprised about? We're starting right now. Okay, so the Gemara starts, the Mishnah starts like this. The pasuk says that you need to put the get into her hand, and we're going to have some rules that it doesn't have to be literally her hand. It could also be her courtyard, or her pocketbook, or something. Throw it close to her. We'll see. Someone that throws a get to his wife probably turned it into a paper airplane, let it fly. And she is in her own house. She's in her courtyard. So he's throwing it to her, and she is in a location that belongs to her. She's divorced because she acquired it. Let's say she is standing in his house and he throws it to her. Or she is in his courtyard. Now the who over here is the get. Even if the get lands in the bed that she's on, she's not divorced. She's not in her own location. She's in his house. Whose bed is she on? She's probably on his bed. That's what it sounds like. Or maybe not. Maybe it's her bed. We'll see in the Gemara. Maybe it's her bed, but the problem is the floor is not hers. Right? So the get lands on the bed. It's not good enough. So take into her lap, or take kalsa into her basket. Her is the then she's divorced. So we see that there are other options than just putting it into her hand. The Gemara says, Minani Mili, where do we know this from? That we have other alternative ways of getting her divorced without putting it into her hand. Tana Rabbanan, it was taught in the Brisa of Nasim Biyada. We quote a pasuk. Pasuk in the Brisa quotes the pasuk. It says that he should place the get in her hand. Ainli Eliyada. Pasuk says her hand. Gaga Chatzera Karfifa Minayin. How do we know that we can put it on her roof in her courtyard? Some area that's enclosed. Minayin. How do you know that works too? It says you should place it. You should give it. Now, if you read another word, it says biyada in her hand, but the Gemara is ignoring that word. It's just saying he should give it. Give it where? It doesn't say. Doesn't say. So it means chatzer as well. Rashi explains that the word order is what's. It could have said biyada yitnana, that he should, in her hand, he should give it. The fact that it didn't do that, that tells me that it's telling me that really it could be given anyway. So why did it say biyada if it doesn't mean it? I'm going to say that it needs to be an area that's guarded, similar to the way her hand guards something. So the yada is coming to teach me something, but it's not coming to tell me literally. Vitanya was also taught in Bryson. Vitanya Namihachu was also taught Kaviganav regarding a thief. You know, when a thief steals, he has to pay double. So when he's caught with the you want to get something else? You want to follow along with something? So he's caught with the item, so he has to return the item plus pay another payment to the original owner. And over there it says that if you find the item in his hand, if the item is found in his hand, so it says yadai in his hand. I only know if I find it in his hand. How do I know if I find it in his courtyard, in his roof, in his enclosure? How do you know the same thing applies? It says if you find it. I know it says in his hand, but it says if you find it. So over there, the word order also probably it could have said biyadai timatze or something, and it chose to say first find it. So that tells me that it doesn't need to be specifically in his hand. Now, those two lessons that we have, you see, what we're learning now is that even if the thief didn't really take it in his hand, he never actually touched it. So how do you acquire it? The animal walked into his property, and he says, closes the door. which means he locked it into his property without ever touching it. So nevertheless, he's still a quarry, has to pay double.
Are we making a couple on Shabbos?
Huh? It's prohibited on Shabbos. It wasn't his animal. Well, if he takes it, it would be his. But he's like a frum guy, worried about muktzah. So anyway, he has to pay double even in that case. And that's what we learned from this pasuk. The Gemara says, "Why do I need two?" You wanted to ask him?
Oh yeah, are we making a couple with Gane and like ownership or something?
Yeah, what we're doing is we're doing a comparison between a get and the ganav. Both of them could be transferred without touching. The husband putting it into her property, the courtyard, and by the item going into the courtyard of the ganav and him closing the door on it. And both of those, it's considered that he acquired it, and all the laws of acquisition apply to it. So we're asking, why do you need two cases to tell me this? One of them would tell me would be a precedent for the other one. So it says it's richa. No, I need both. Yashmin and get. If it would only tell me the get that works in her courtyard, mishum de balkarcha megarsha, because a get, a person can throw a get to his wife, and she'll be divorced against her will. So,
but she doesn't have to catch it.
Well, now we're saying she doesn't have to catch it, but if we would say that by the
house,
right, if we're saying that that she could be divorced against her will, and she also doesn't need to catch it, then we'd say that that's connected. Why is she divorced when it goes into her house or into her courtyard? Because, well, you can divorce her against her will. That's part of the lie. So you just throw it at her. It's going to be a good divorce. That's going to be problematic.
She has to be aware of it when it occurs.
Yeah, we're going to see that as well.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
She has to be knowledgeable about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
It's going to need to be a statement as well. We'll see. Avalgana, the less about karcha, but a person can't steal against his will. You can't put something into someone's property, and the guy says, "I don't want it," and it says, "Well, tough luck. It's in your courtyard." Right? It doesn't work like that. So we could say also that we would say that maybe he's not considered responsible to pay double if he never actually took it. It's only something that you could do against the person's will that the courtyard also works.
It's like those newspapers you get, like in your mailbox, just like
Right. Yashmin and Ganav, especially if you get in trouble with someone putting it there, now you have to pay double because of Yashmin and Ganav. Maybe if it would only say by the Ganav, I would have thought Mishum de Kansi Rachmana, because the Torah is very strict about Geneva, you have to pay double. Could have thought that even if you don't touch it, you still have to pay double. Aval get, but by the divorce, we don't see that there was any prohibition there, that the person were upset with him, upset with her, and say that we have to make it as if she acquired it. By the Geneva, we say, oh, the Torah is so strict about this. That's why we say that he acquires it even though he never touched it. But by the get, we would say maybe no, maybe it has to be really into her hands. That's why we need both halachas, that it doesn't need to be into her hands by the get and by the thief. To tell me each of them wouldn't have told me the other one. Basically, the stringency of the get is that it goes against her. She gets it against her will. So maybe the courtyard works there. The stringency of the ganav is that he has to pay a fine, that he has to pay extra. Maybe it works there. I wouldn't have known the other one if it only would have said each.
But he doesn't necessarily have to take something with his hands, right?
Right.
In his domain.
Exactly.
If someone leaves their jacket in someone's house, it's not like it's stealing. But
it could be stealing if the guy closes the door with the intention of stealing it. Yeah, that could be considered stealing. Just like a lost object. You pick it up, it depends on your intention. If it's your intention to return it or your intention is to take it. One is stealing and one is not, even though it's the same, just picking it up. So here also, you close the door, it would depend probably on your intention. Okay, Chatzeira, the Gemara has a question. How does a courtyard acquire the get? Whatever belongs to the wife belongs to the husband. And in order for a get to work, it needs to be transferred out. Transferred from the husband to the woman. It's a big problem. Every time the husband puts the get into her courtyard. Says, "Oh, courtyard. The husband has the rights to that courtyard because nechse malog, everything that he eats the fruits of the courtyard. He eats the fruits. So not the courtyard, but he eats the fruits of the courtyard, which means that items that go into the courtyard, he can collect the rent from the courtyard if he's renting it, right? All the profits of the courtyard belong to him. She owns it. So here the get goes into the courtyard, and the husband now owns the get.
He owned the get.
He owned the get before.
He gave it away.
I know, but he has to give it to her. He has to transfer it out. He can't put it into his own pocket.
But Rennie made the point that she
Can the
owns
husband?
courtyard.
But the husband owns the rights of the courtyard, which is the rights of it, which is the usage of it.
That's a fine line.
Yeah, any sort of fruit. It doesn't just mean like an apple. But so basically, what we're saying now is like, what does he do? He takes the get, puts it from one pocket into his other pocket, and he says, "I divorced you by taking the get for you." Okay, it has to leave his hands. So Amar Rabbi Elazar, because of Ladin Advar, mainly ben Chesayich, Rabbi Elazar comes up with an ukimta, with a case that it could work, because he wrote a document to his wife saying that I don't want to have anything to do with any of your possessions. So I don't want your courtyard. I'm not using your courtyard. And now when he puts it into the courtyard, now the courtyard is really hers because he removed himself from that. Okay, it's funny. The Gemara says, the Gemara challenges the language over here. The language just doesn't work. The Gemara says, and if he writes those words, my hobby, what happens? But Tani, we have a brayso. Mainly outside the zoo. If someone tells his friend that I don't want to have anything to do with your field, talking about two partners. Partners, in order for them to remove themselves from the partnership, they can't just say, I'm out. They have to give that partnership that over to someone else. You can't just remove yourself. You have to transfer something. It's basically you stepping out doesn't actually remove you from the partnership. You have to transfer whatever item it is over to the other person. So there's two ways of doing this. You go out or you transfer. Basically what the language here is that he says, I'm out of this. And we're saying, oh, that doesn't work. We see it by partners, it doesn't work. If he says, ainly I have nothing to do with this field, I have no business with it. My hands are removed to it. Not saying anything because he didn't use the right language.
Don't we learn that by Shifra Ebed as well? When we said Ebed is half an Ebed, half not an Ebed, because the other one did not keep a star.
Yeah, but that would be partners. But here we're talking in the partnership itself. How do we get out of a partnership? You have to transfer the items of the partnership over to either the other partner or to someone else. To make it hefker or something, but you can't just say I'm out. That doesn't release you from that.
That's what I'm saying. You couldn't say I'm out.
Oh, could be. Yeah, by Evan, we're going to see you need a document. They hand it to him. So Amri Debi Rabbi Yanai says, or the yeshiva of Rabbi Yanai says, because of Lavai Darusa, you're allowed to say I'm out before you actually acquired it, not after you acquired it. Because you can remove yourself from what's going to happen, but not once you're in it, you can't remove yourself like that.
It's like a poker game. The guy sees he's losing, he says, I'm out. He doesn't have to go and put more money.
So
That's what the movie.
we got an example over here from poker. So okay.
It's like you don't want to pay taxes on a building that you're not using. You can't just say, oh, I don't want it anymore. I'm not going to pay. It's not mine anymore. You can't do that.
Right.
Goes to collections.
Right.
Make it extra for the tax bill.
Right.
And then claim it again.
Right. Bill says you make it hefker before the tax bill, and then you go back in and acquire. That was by Misa. That was a discussion by Misa.
When you acquire it, you have to pay all the due taxes on it.
Oh yeah, it's not going to help. Right. Okay. But the guy went to the doctor. And and he gives him tells him what to do anyway. He gives him a bill. He says, so what's this for? He says, for the advice that I gave you. He says, I'm not taking your advice. Okay, so
My daughter, one of my daughters took her dog to bed yesterday because he was sick. And she said to the vet, Masha Shaya yesterday, she said, I want you to do everything. I mean, this dog's very sick. It's, very important dog. She comes back, she's so upset. What's the matter? She goes, if they charged me $450 and said there's nothing wrong with my dog, couldn't find anything at all. He took $450 for nothing. I said, oh, you want your dog to be really sick? I mean, then you feel better.
okay,
That's what I heard about.
right.
Typical praying, but it's something wrong.
The Rav Kana. We say that this is supported by a statement of Rav Kana. Rav Kana said, if a person is inheriting from his father, from a biblical type of inheritance, then he can't really get out of that. That the Torah says. But if there's some sort of side inheritance, some sort of gift that he's getting, some sort of rabbinic inheritance that he's getting, he can get out of it before it starts. The Rava, like Rava says, Rava, someone that says, I do not want this institution of the sages going to similar to this. Shaiman, we listen to him. Mike going to what does it mean similar to this? What's the case that he was talking about? There's an institution that was made on behalf of the woman that the husband is going to support her. But because of that, she has to give her income to the husband. Now, she doesn't, maybe, and there were possible exceptions. And also, she can get out of it. She can get out of it by saying that I don't need your sustenance or your support. Right. I'll keep my own income, and I'll, which means that there's times when before all of this happens, she can get out of it. So therefore, over here, what we're saying is that the husband can use this language to say, I'm out of your courtyard. I don't want to have anything to do with your court. And then when he divorces her, he can give her the get in the courtyard. The only thing is that he would have had to say that before the marriage actually happened. So just ask, why don't you just say the proper wording? And then you don't have to come on to all of this. But anyway, so because there's another Gemara that goes through the same thing, and that's why. Rava Amar, this is the answer that you're probably familiar with. Rava says, how does this work? How can he put a get into her courtyard and he still is not acquiring it? So he says like this, let's say he puts the get into her hand. Who owns the work of her hands? The work of her hands, the husband owns also. So when he puts the get into her hands, even in a real case, when it's actually into her hands, who's acquiring it then? Back to the husband. So everything the wife acquires belongs to the husband. So how does it work by a regular get? Only way, what I'm going to have to say is like this, that it works simultaneously, that she's divorced and therefore she owns her hand. But how does she get divorced? By getting the get. But how does she get the get? By putting it into her hand, but her hand's not hers yet. So, but when she's divorced, it is hers. So it happens simultaneously, right? It's just like this. How do you get it? How does she get divorced? By acquiring her hand as her own hand, and whatever she acquires is hers. How does that happen? By getting the get. But she can't get the get, so it has to happen simultaneously. And so therefore, the same thing applies to the courtyard. That's what Rava was bringing up. Rava was saying, how does she ever get divorced? Because Gita Viyada, it's a simultaneous act that she acquires her hand and her get at the same time. So too, she acquires the courtyard and her get at the same time. Amle Ravina Ravashi. Ravina says to Ravashi, Rava, what did Rava just do over here? He says, Yad the Isha Kakash. They had a question about a woman's hand. She doesn't acquire her own hand. I understand that when she does work, the husband owns the work. the income. But Yada Gufei Mikanyale, does the husband own the hand? It's not the husband's hand. It's the wife's hand. Just when it does work, the husband acquires it. But he can still put it into her hand. It's not his. It's her property. Her hand is her property. So it's why? What was the question? So rather, he says like this: Amrlei, Ravina, Ravashi says to Ravina, Rava Yad Eved Kakashale. Rava's question was not about a woman. Rava's question was about a slave. How does the slave acquire himself? You give him a document. But whose document? According to this, in one opinion that says you have to give the document to someone else to acquire for him. But if you have to give, but according to the opinion that says you can give the document to the Eved himself, so you give the document to the slave. What does the slave have? Everything that the slave acquires belongs to the master. So did the master really give anything to the slave? No, he gave it to himself. Put it from one pocket to another. So how does the slave ever go free? So Yad Eved Ki Yad Rabbi Dami, how does it work? Rava was saying that just like by the slave, when you give him the document and you give him, you're basically giving him his hand as well at the same simultaneous with that document. So too by the get and her courtyard are acquired to her simultaneously. There was a fellow on his deathbed. It was Friday afternoon, and he's writing a get for his wife. Wants to give her the get before he passes away, so that she shouldn't have to marry his younger brother and wait 13 years for him to grow up. Well, he doesn't have enough time to give her the get before Shabbos. They finished it right by candlelighting, and the siren, the Shabbos siren goes up. So that we're done. We'll have to leave this. The following day, Takaf Lealmi gets very ill. They think he's at his last breath. Asalakami de Rava. They came to Rava. Amalahu wants to give her the get, but it's on Shabbos. Taisus explains that the get, on Rashi, that the get is muktzah, and can't touch the get. So he says like this. Zilu Amrle Likanya Naale Lahu Duchta the Yasif Begita. Basically, acquire to her or give over to her the place that the get is on. Like, let's say the get is in a drawer, in a closet, in a, on the dresser. Give her that place, and she will go and she will open and close the door or something. She'll close and open the door to that place, which means she'll make a kinyan on the karka. A kinyan on Shabbos is a problem itself. But apparently they're going to be lenient on that so that she's not stuck for 13 years. It's considered igun. They're going to be lenient on that. The muktzah, I don't know why the muktzah was a problem more than the kinyan. That's right. Right.
13 years is just the worst case.
It's the worst case. Yeah. The question is, let's say he was 12 years old. Let's say he was 12 and a half. Let's say he was 13. And would we also take these leniencies on Shabbos? How much igun is igun? 2 months? 1 year? 2 years? 3 years? Anyway, I heard from someone said 6 weeks. That was like the rule. I don't know how they got that, but okay. So, the Tanan was taught in the Mishnah, if you close the door, you put up a fence, or you break a fence, Kolshu Harizu Chazaka, that's considered acquiring a property. So therefore she can acquire a property on Shabbos by closing the door or opening the door or something like that, fencing it in. And that's going to be hers. What are you gaining by this? Whatever the wife acquires, the husband acquires. She acquires the property, but it's basically putting into her courtyard, which the husband owns. Ichsif, Rava gets embarrassed. It turns out that the whole story was not accurate. She wasn't married to him, she was betrothed to him, which means that the husband doesn't own her property yet. So therefore, she still needs a divorce, but there was no problem for the husband to put it into her courtyard, or for the husband to put it in. She acquires that area.
The get was unfinished though, no? Like they couldn't finish writing it because Shabbos was coming.
Yeah, no, the get was finished, but he wasn't able to give it to her. Taisus asks over here, what about we're going to see that she's not allowed to take the get. When she's acquiring, it's like she's taking the get. Right? Tesha says that that's not the issue because it's coming from the husband's domain to her domain. It's considered like it's being given to her. Anyway, so Rava defends himself in front of Rav Elish. If your question is accurate by a woman that's married, is it accurate by a woman that's only betrothed? That the husband acquires everything she owns? It's not so. Rava then said, Rava then said, and even if she was married, it's not a problem. Because Rava holds that it works simultaneous. As she acquires a get, she also acquires the property to acquire the get. Okay. The Gemara asks, Rava, why did Rava even get embarrassed? He said before in the Gemara that that it works simultaneous. Why was he embarrassed? He had an answer right there. Gemara says, when did Rava say this? Rava said this because of this story. What we said before was quoting this story. Now we're going back to say the history. You remember the lady that was reading the Tzenorena? Yosef was going to see his brothers, and so she.
That was it.
So she says, Yosef, don't go. Don't you remember what happened last year? They put you in the pit and they sold you, and anyway, that's the Gemara over here. That didn't Rava say this already? No, Rava said this after the story. That okay. If she's in her house, then it's going to work. Amarula says, she has to be standing right next to the courtyard for her to acquire. Which means she's basically standing there and watching it. That's how her courtyard works.
That's to show her das. Because if she wasn't there or she wasn't around or didn't know of it, so she couldn't be makabel.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's the das or if it's the mishtameres, or if the courtyard needs to be guarded by her.
But she needs das.
She needs, does she need das? She doesn't need das. Could be balkarcha.
But if she's sleeping.
Oh, that we'll see soon about sleeping.
So
Yeah, but
he
no,
can't do a
but let's say,
balkarcha while she's
right, but
sleeping.
let's say she's notified that it's in her courtyard. Would that work? According to Ula, no. She has to be there because the courtyard only acquires when she's there. That's what Rav Aisha says, Afilu hi b'Tveria, b'chatzer b'tzipayra. Rav Aisha says, no, she doesn't have to be there. She could be in Tveria. The courtyard's in Tzipayri, or he Tzipayri v'chatzer b'Tveria. Could be in a different city. The Guresh works. The Gemara says, how does that happen? The Mishnah says, the Mishnah was talking about he's throwing the get to her, and it goes into her courtyard. So according to the Mishnah, she's in the courtyard. The Mishnah fits with Ula, not with Rav Aisha. Hachi kamar v'hi kimisha b'teich beisavi kimisha b'teich hatzera. Given the chatzim mishtameres l'daiti miskareshes, doesn't actually need to be there. It's as if she's there because the courtyard is locked. The courtyard is guarded. No one's going to come in and take. It has a fence around it, so she can acquire it according to Rav Aisha. Let's say that the machlekes Ula and Rav Aisha is based on the following discussion. How does the courtyard work? Is the courtyard an extension of her body? Just like her hand acquires, the courtyard is like her hand. And therefore, you put it into her courtyard, it's like you put it into her pocket, you put it into her hand, you put it into her wallet, you put it into her courtyard. It's all an extension of her hand. Other one says the courtyard is not her. The courtyard is her proxy, is her messenger. And you can give it to the agent, to the shliach. You give it to the shliach and give it to the courtyard. Okay, what's the difference? The difference is if you have to be right there. So the Gemara says, first of all, like that's not the kuli alma chatz mishum yadis rabbi. Everyone holds that a chatzar works, a courtyard works because it's like an extension of her hand. Mar savar kiyada, Ula holds that it's just like her hand. Mayada besmucha chatzera besmucha. Just like the hand is close, so therefore she has to be close to the courtyard. Beidach, and Rav Aisha would say, the hand is attached to her arm, which is attached to her shoulder, it's attached to her body. So also the courtyard has to be attached to her. Elaki yada, rather it's like her hand. My yada mishtamer sadaita, chatzir mishtamer sadaita. It just has to be guarded, just like something in her hand. She knows that it's there. So too the courtyard has to be guarded. So, but lafuki chatzir mishtamer sadaita, which is coming to exclude a courtyard which is protected, but not with her intention. We're going to see in the next Gemara that if she gives it to if the husband gives it to her eved that's awake, it's not going to work because the eved is guarding it on his own. It has to be guarded by her.
I was thinking earlier that the courtyard is like her hand because the husband gets benefit of what the courtyard produces.
That's a good comparison.
Just like he gets the
Yeah.
protection of her hands.
Okay. Okay. It's connected. In its origin, it's not connected. Those are two separate things. She brings in property and he eats the produce of that property. That's one institution. There's another institution of the work of her hands are quite another. She can get out of the work of her hands and she doesn't get out of the husband owning the property. Those are two separate concepts, but they're similar, but it's not. If she says, I'm going to keep my own income and you don't have to feed me, that does not affect when the husband is eating the produce of his wife's property that she brought into the marriage. She could do the same thing to the property. Well, actually, can she do the same thing? I'm not sure. And the husband can say, I don't want the property. I don't know if she can get out of that. Okay. Ugavra, there was a person. We threw a get to his wife. Havikaima bechatzer, she's in a courtyard. Azal Gita, the get went. Nafal bepisla went on a block of wood, on some board or something. Amar Rabbi Yosef. So it landed in the courtyard, but it landed on this board. It must have burnt up or something because what's the problem? Unless the problem is that she went and took it instead of him giving it to her. The question is if her courtyard acquired it.
Maybe the board is above 10.
We'll see. Amar Rabbi Yosef Chazinan. We have to take a look. If the board itself is 4 amas by 4 amas, it's in its own domain. And if it's under 4 amas, then it's in the domain of the wife. Mayaskina, what are we talking about? If it's her courtyard, who cares if there's a board that's 4 amas? It's in her courtyard. It could land on the table, on the chair, on the grill, on whatever. Hopefully it's not on, but whatever it is, it's going to be it's her courtyard. It must be that it's his courtyard. Make it look like if it's 4 amas, it's not. It's a problem. If it's less than 4 amas, it's going to be okay. It's his courtyard. So, the Gemara says, it's necessary. The Aish Lamakam, he's lending her a area in the courtyard to acquire the get. Says, I'm lending you my courtyard to acquire the get. The Chad Makam Mushliyanshi, Trey Makam Mushliyanshi. When he lends her the courtyard, he's only lending her one place. He's not lending her the whole courtyard. He's not lending her the mill, the whatever else was in the courtyard, his treadmill, his all those things that are there. Probably has a boxing thing. He's not lending her all this exercise equipment. He's lending her the courtyard. So if those are separate areas, then he didn't lend it to her. When do we say that it's considered a separate area if it's 4 amas by 4 amas? But if it's less than that, it's fine. It's all one area which he lent to her. Then that's only if it's not, that area wasn't 10 tvachim tall. But like you said, if it's 10 tvachim tall, even if it's not 4 amas, it's already a separate rishus. It would only be if it doesn't have a modifying name to that area. In other words, that area is called the area of, whatever. So then he didn't lend her that because he would have said it if he lent it. He said, I'm lending you the courtyard. Even if it's not 10 tvachim high, even if it's not 4 amas, he never lent to that area, it's not going to work. Okay. The Mishnah said that even if the get lands on the bed that she is on, she's still not divorced if she's in the husband's property, right? She's in the husband's house. And well, we didn't say whose bed it was, but we know that it's in his house. she's not divorced. It has to be in her house, her property, her courtyard, something that she had owned from beforehand. Rava says, when do we say she's not divorced? That's because the bed belongs to him. But if it would be in her bed, in his house, migureshes, then it would work. So in other words, you have larger property is his, smaller property is hers. The get in the smaller property, the get lands in the basket, her basket in his property is going to work. She'll acquire, right? The larger property should like absorb everything that's hers inside it, but no, we say that her little area in here acquires, even though it's his property. Tani Namihachi was also taught in the Brisa. If it's her bed, she's divorced. Her bed, she's divorced. This is a whole discussion in Baba Basra. If someone goes to a store, he puts down his bags, his bring in their own kalim. Like just like today, they bring your own bags, so they don't recycle and all that stuff. They, of course, back then you had your own pots. So you bring your pots in. The storekeeper puts the grain into your pot, into your container. Do you acquire it before you actually pick it up? Do you acquire it because it's in your container? The container is in the possession of, is in the property of the store. If it would be outside the store, then fine. But here it's in the store. It's sort of like absorbed by the store. It becomes bottled to the store, which the store is not owned by the purchaser. The store is owned by the seller. So that's a whole discussion in Baba Basra. According to this, it's coming out that you should acquire it. We see that the lekech acquires it. In Baba Basra, we didn't have that so clear. In Baba Basra, we had a whole question about this. Like the Gemara says, we're talking about over here, where it's not literally the bed. It's not on the floor. The bed is 10 tvachim high. What happens then? 10 tvachim high, we say that he doesn't mind anything that's above 10 tvachim high. He's sort of like allows her to keep things 10 tvachim above the floor. Why? Because he can use the area underneath the bed. That's his area. So he allows her to have her own area above 10 tvachim. He does own it, but he doesn't mind, someone comes in, where should I leave my thing for Shabbos, my wallet? So put it up there on the shelf. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I don't mind if that's your area. That's so it doesn't become bottled to his property.
When we learned about carrying on Shabbos,
There was a Makam
what was
Patur.
it like?
Makam
Patur.
Patur. 10 tvachim high was in a Rishus Harabim. 10 tvachim high was not considered a Rishus Harabim. It's considered a exemption domain.
So above 10 tvachim is exempt.
Yeah. In Rishus Yachid, it didn't work like that. Anyway, Vekam Makam Karai. What about the feet? It has to be, it's not floating. It has to have feet. It says Makam Karai like Kapti, and people don't care that the feet, they're thin legs that are going down. That they don't mind, even though the bed is in the property. The bed is in the property, but it's above 10 tvachim. So it's considered her bed is not bottled to the whole house. We
learned something a few months ago about a plant in a pot that was on the stand with feet, and that was different from a plant that was really on the ground.
Yeah, that had to do with the hole in the bottom of the pot.
Yeah, but if the pot was in like a plant stand,
that should do, I think, with the nourishment that it gets from. I don't know if that's a good comparison. Yeah, there was something there. Okay. I'm sorry.
Like it doesn't.
Oh, if it's considered attached. If it into her lap or into her basket, she's divorced. Amai, how is she divorced? Exactly the same question we asked before. She's standing in his property. She has her bag or basket or something. It's how does she get divorced with that? It's in Baba Basra, we didn't have it so clear that her containers are going to acquire inside the property of the seller. Okay, here it's the husband. I'm Rav Yudah Mashmul, but no, she's holding the basket. Of course, she's acquiring it. But it's hanging on her. It's like her purse. It just has to be attached to her. It doesn't have to be hanging, even if it's on the floor. As long as it's attached to her, it's going to be acquired by her. She has her basket between her legs, and since the husband gives her permission to sit there, so between her legs is also considered her area. Rav Misharshia bar Rav Dimi Amar Ken Shesabala Meicher Kalsis. Talking about over here where the husband sells baskets. He doesn't mind if there's another basket there. Different ways of learning this Gemara, but if he has a house or a room that's all full of baskets because he sells baskets, he doesn't mind if there's another basket there, and that's why he actually gives her the place to keep her basket in. Rabbi Yochanan says you don't have to worry about all of those things. It doesn't have to be, it's attached in this. If he gives her a place to sit, so then her lap is her lap. And her basket, he allows her to put her basket down. Put her basket down means that he's like lending her a place to keep her basket.
All these cases it's not going into her hand.
Right. It's always going into something else.
What happens? A guy wrote a get for his wife, hypothetically, and he throws it over the mechitza and he goes, "Here's your get." And there's like 20 women there, 2 women. And one of them goes, "Oh, that's not my name." And they keep on like tossing it like a hot potato until eventually it hit. So like those women in between considered shluchas who can't be shluchim. Did nobody acquire it to the real person, or is that null and void? But if it ended up eventually in the right person's hand, because then she has a dash, she got it, and he said, "Yes, you get," would she be divorced? That's a real wild question.
I don't know the answer.
Is it theoretically possible?
Could be if they're considered shluch.
But each one said, "Nope, that's not mine." Went to the next one. They all had the same name, except for the middle names.
So yeah.
Funny.
He had all his wives on one side of the mechitza. All of them, the name is Rachel. But it's Rachel this, Rachel Shoshana, Rachel this. Each one looks at it's Rachel who, which Rachel. They have to like see the middle small print to see which one it is. And they keep passing it around. And you made it look like they all don't want to be divorced. It's like, oh shoot, it's not mine. Okay. Amar Rava, my time at the Rabbi Yochanan. Rava says, why does Rabbi Yochanan say that he doesn't have to actually give her the place? It's all like automatic. If you say another makbid le'al makom fake le'al makom kalsa, a person doesn't care. Come into his house, you don't have to, she sits down. He doesn't mind. Say, can I sit here? Or something. It's fine. Tanya Nami Hachi was also telling Bryce Zarkula l'teicheka. If you threw it to her lap, l'teich kalsa, into her basket, l'teich kol davar shuk kalsa, or anything that's like a basket. Raising Meguresha, she's divorced. Kol davar shuk kalsa lasuyimai. Why do you have to say anything that's like her basket? Even if it's her plate or basket that she eats dates in, that would also be okay to put the get in that area. I'm not sure why that's a chiddush of what's like, it's just a basket. Like why specifically the dates? How does that change anything? I don't know. Okay. Can I do one more Mishnah?
You could.
Should I go on or should I stop? No, it's a Mishnah and a Gemara.
You just said, "Can I do one more?"
Yeah, let's go.
I'll leave it here.
We don't want to get behind again.
You want to go further?
I would, so we don't get.
Because you're not going in the minion downstairs. It's starting in 7
We'll do this. Let's do
minutes.
this. We'll do on Thursday night. Is that okay? We'll leave it here, and on Thursday night we'll try to catch up.
Okay.
What time Thursday night?
After Ma'ariv, it's about 8:45. What time is it? Where are you, Moshe?
I'm in Toronto. Same time.
Oh, okay.
Okay, beseder. Just if you could put on the chat a reminder exactly what time you're starting.
Okay. What's today? Wednesday, right?
Yeah.